Good morning, everybody. Please grab your Bible and turn to Judges chapter 6. Judges chapter 6 will be our text today. If you were noticing, I'm glad Grant brought this up. If you're noticing a distinct lack of manhood in the building this morning because of man camp and fall break, I think a lot of people are gone for fall break, but man camp, we had 53 guys out at man camp. And I'll just be honest, it's a zoo out there. We had some go home because they ate so much junk food that they started throwing up. That happened. The boys just running around with hatchets, attacking trees. It's wild. I feel fortunate to be alive, honestly, this morning, coming back. Now, that's a good time every year. If you have not been, guys, if you haven't been to man camp, try to get to man camp. It's a good time to just hang out around the fire and meet people and eat. Because guys show up with grills and Blackstones. I don't even bring food. I just show up and bounce from place to place, eating burgers and steak. It's a good place to be. We miss them this morning. Whoop, I skipped one here. Let me go back. There we go. 1 Corinthians 10. Paul writes this. He has been telling them about the Israelites and the mistakes that they had made. And he says this, 1 Corinthians 10, these things had happened to them as an example, but they were written down for our instruction on whom the end of the ages has come. So what Paul is saying there, he's saying you need to look at the Old Testament, you need to look at the stories that happened in the Old Testament, the choices those people made, and they will instruct you and serve it as an example. Either a good example or a bad example, but it's going to be one or the other. We're supposed to open our Bibles, turn back to 1 Kings and read and learn and not make the mistakes they made. We're supposed to turn to Daniel and read and learn and learn, we need to be like Daniel in his faithfulness. But those things are supposed to instruct and enrich and guide our lives. So that's what we're going to do the next few weeks. We're going to look in Judges specifically at the life of a man named Gideon. And we're going to look at his life, what he did, how he operated, and we're supposed to take some things from it. So, Judges 6 is our text. During the time of the Judges, it was a very unique time in the history of the Jewish people. They have been delivered from slavery in Egypt by the power of God. He brought them out of that oppression, and he brought them to Canaan, the promised land, where he intended to enrich and bless them. But first, the problem was with that, there were a lot of people already living in Canaan's land. They were wicked, evil people. In fact, God tells the Israelites, he says, look, I'm not sending you here because you're so much better than all them. They are wicked people, but I'm going to drive them out before you because I live in covenant with you. You live in covenant with me. I'm sending you into this place, and you're going to live in houses you didn't build, and you're going to harvest crops you didn't grow, and it's going to be a place of blessing. He brought them there with Moses and Joshua, conquered the Canaan's land. Now during the time of the Judges, they aren't ruled by a king. They're not guided every time by a prophet all the way through, although later Samuel kind of closes the time of the Judges off as a prophet. But they are guided and judged by judges. God will pick people and choose people who will either deliver them or judge the problems they have. Gideon is right at I think he's the third or fourth story that we hear about in the book of Judges. It doesn't start well. Look in Judges 6, verse 1. The people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and the Lord gave them into the hand of Midian 7 years. The hand of Midian overpowered Israel, and because of Midian, the people of Israel made for themselves the dens that are in the mountains and the caves and the strongholds. From whenever the Israelites planted crops, the Midianites and the Amalekites and the people of the east would come up against them. They would encamp against them and devour the produce of the land as far as Gaza and leave no sustenance in Israel and no sheep or ox or donkey. For they would come up with their livestock and their tents. They would come like locusts in number. Both they and their camels could not be counted, so that they laid waste the land that as they came in And Israel was brought very low because of Midian, and the people of Israel cried out for help to the Lord. This isn't the first time they've done this. If you read through Judges, the whole book, you see this disturbing and depressing pattern of them living in covenant with God and God blessing them and blessing them and blessing them. And that's like a roller coaster. They're up at the top. Then in the midst of that blessing, they turn away from God, and then bad things happen. And then they'll cry out to God again. He'll send a prophet or a deliverer and call them back to a relationship with Him, and then things will be good. And then they'll do evil in the sight of the Lord again, and then they go back down in the valley. It's just over and over and over. Reading that whole book in one chunk is a depressing experience. And then I realized, that's kind of been me in my life. Sometimes I'm doing great, and everything's great with God, and then I move a step away or walk away from God a little bit, and then I'm down in the valley, and it's only when I realize that life away from God that I'll call out to God and come back. That was my life as a younger man. Lord willing, it's more like this these days, right? The further you go, hopefully it's like that. But this happened to them again and again and again, and they could not learn their lesson. The sin that they committed, the evil that they did in the sight of God, again and again, was the sin of idolatry, where they would take the blessings of God, and He blessed and blessed and blessed them, and they would start ascribing the source of those blessings to idols, to made-up gods. For Gideon, it was Baal and Asherah. Baal was like a storm god of the Philistines, and Asherah was a fertility goddess. They start ascribing the blessings that God had given them to these things which were nothing. When they did this, they cut themselves off from the power of God. They cut themselves off from the source of their blessing. In fact, according to the covenant God made with them, curses had to fall upon them because they turned their backs on Him. If you want to put all the Old Testament in perspective, read Deuteronomy 28, because a lot of times we read it kind of out of context and we don't understand why God is doing what He's doing. Part of His covenant with them, Deuteronomy 28. The first few verses, God says, if you keep covenant with me, I will bless you. If you keep covenant with me, your crops will grow and thrive. If you keep covenant with me, your enemies will not prevail against you. You won't be losing battle. You won't be losing territory. If you keep covenant with me, your children will grow up in a rich, strong, prosperous land. But if you do not, and by the way, like it's just like 6 or 7 verses maybe in Deuteronomy 20. I can't remember. That's all about keep covenant with me, and I'll bless you. And then the rest of the chapter is, if you do not keep covenant with me, then I will curse you. If you cut yourself off from me, bad things are going to happen. Your crops are going to fail. There's going to be famine. Your enemies will prevail over you. Eventually, you'll be led off. Eventually, they were led off, taken out of their own land God intended to be a blessing, and cast among the nations. That's what's going on here. That's what explains what's happening in the book of Judges. They did evil and bad things happened. In this instance, Midianites came in. Amalekites, specifically Midianites here. But they came in, and did you hear what I just read? They would just ravage the land. The Israelites would work to grow crops. They'd plow, they'd plant, they'd take care of it as well as they could, but they didn't get to experience the harvest because their enemies came in, ravaged them. They would just camp out and take and take and take. They weren't even there to invade and dwell there. They wanted the Israelites to do all the work and them to get all the profit. So that's what they did. They would just consume and devour the Israelites. It was so bad that they just went and hid in caves, it says dens in the mountains. They had to hide out just to survive, because the number of their oppressors was beyond number. Them and their camels, I like that the Bible throws that detail in. Even their camels could not be counted. This was an enemy too great for them. They were suffering at their hands, not because their enemy was too great for them. They were suffering at the hands of the Midianites because they had turned their backs on God. After 7 years of that, they finally cried out to God. My question is, why did it take them 7 years to figure this out? And then it makes me think, why does it take us so long to figure things out? Listen, this sin has consequences. That's the truth of it. Now, we don't live with that same covenant. We don't live with that Deuteronomy 28 covenant of blessings and curses. We don't live by the covenant of law leading to death. We live by the covenant of the Spirit of life, which is very, very different. But nonetheless, sin has consequences. You may think they're not that big a deal. You may think your sin maybe only affects you. That is false. Your sin affects you, and it affects the people that are closest to you, the people that you love. Sin always has consequences. It can rob your joy. It can rob your peace. The further you step away from God, the more you're going to deal with the consequences of living in the world. Your spouse will be affected by it. Your children will be affected by it. Your grandchildren will be affected by it. Sin has consequences. Now, luckily, we have the same option that they had to fix things, crying out to the Lord. When they had suffered to the point that they finally woke up, they cried out to the Lord. And Christian, you can too. By the way, if you're not a Christian, you can too. He's ready. He's ready for you to turn to Him. But those sins have consequences, and the only solution to that is God. Let's keep reading. Verse 7, when the people of Israel cried out to the Lord on account of the Midianites, the Lord sent a prophet to the people of Israel, and he said to them, "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, I led you up from Egypt, and I brought you out of the house of slavery. And I delivered you from the hand of the Egyptians and from the hands of all who oppressed you, and drove them out before you and gave you their land." God is listing the things that He did that should have made them say, we want to stay close to this God as close as we can. We want to keep covenant with Him. We want to keep faith with Him. Not only did He deliver us by incredible power from the hand of the Egyptians and that slavery and oppression, but then He drove all these people out, these Canaanites out before us, so that we could live in this place of blessing, this land flowing with milk and honey. That's what they should have said. So He's establishing what He's already done to them. Verse 10, "And I said to you, I am the Lord your God. You shall not fear the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice." Listen, prophets, we tend to think of prophets as people who tell the future. Prophets, really their job was to come to the people of God as a lawyer, telling them how they're doing wrong and calling them back to doing right. So they were wondering, I'm sure they were wondering, why is all this bad stuff happening to us? That's what Gideon asked here in a minute. We'll read that. That's what Gideon asked. Why is all this bad stuff happening? Here's why. I blessed you and blessed you and blessed you and blessed you, but you broke covenant with me. Verse 11. Now the angel of the Lord came and sat under the terebinth at Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, while his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress to hide it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, "The Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor." Some translations say, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." And Gideon said to him, "Please, my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all His wonderful deeds that our fathers recounted to us, saying, did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? And now the Lord has forsaken us and given us into the hand of Midian." And the Lord turned to him and said, "Go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you?" And he said to him, "Please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house." And the Lord said to him, "But I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man. Do you hear what Gideon is saying here? Look where Gideon's at. The Midianites have covered the land. They're like locusts devouring the land. People are living in caves. He has found some wheat somewhere. He had a hidden crop somewhere that he could harvest, but he has to come thresh it in a wine press. He has to take it to a place where he can hide out just to gain some bounty from the land. He's not a warrior. He's hiding. He's not engaging the enemy. He's trying to keep hidden from their eyes and their sight. But the angel of the Lord shows up and says, hey, well, let me read it again because I want this in your head. He says to him, the Lord is with you, O mighty man of valor. God is calling a man who's hiding out. God is calling a man who is afraid to fight. And he's going to send him into battle to deliver the people of Israel. Gideon, though, gets it. He says, who am I? How can I save anybody? I'm from a small tribe, and I'm from the least of the families in that tribe, and I'm the least of that family. I'm the least of the least of the least. I'm nobody. How in the world can I help anybody? Answer that. What do you guys think? How in the world can that nobody help anybody? We've got 3 clues there. Look in verse 12. In verse 12, the angel of the Lord's greeting, he opens it by saying, the Lord is with you. Look in verse 14. The Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you? And then in verse 16, the Lord said to him, but I will be with you. Gideon's right. In and of himself, he can't do a thing. If he picked up a spear and went after the Midianites, maybe he'd kill one, maybe he'd kill 2, but it would be a drop in the bucket. It would have no impact. The only hope that Gideon has of accomplishing the mission that God is giving him is the fact that God is with him. So listen, God calls the least to be mighty warriors. If you are thinking, there is nothing I could do to make an impact in the world on behalf of God, your head's in the right space. And good luck. And here's some good news. That's exactly where you need to be. The people who are going to make a difference for God in the world are not the people who are impressed with themselves. The people who are going to make a difference for God in the world are not the people who think, yeah, I can do this. They're the people who think, man, I'm nothing and I'm nobody. But they also connect that to the thought that even if I'm nothing, God is everything. Are you listening? If you think I'm not the person to do this job, God's probably going to tap you on the shoulder and tell you to do this job. It's all through Scripture. What did Moses say when God called him? Nope. Isn't it funny how many people try to turn down the jobs that God tries to give them? Moses didn't want the job to go into Egypt and talk to Pharaoh and deliver the Israelites. He had excuse and excuse and excuse. Wouldn't do it. Again and again, you see God pick out people who are maybe not that smart. So if that's you, good news. Maybe they're not that strong. Maybe they're in and of themselves. They don't have a lot going on. But God picks them because the key is not how important you are, not how great you are. The key is how great your God is. And what we need to do is get ourselves out of the way. Look at the people Jesus picked. Fisherman. A tax collector. I mean, these are the people that Jesus hunted down and said, I want you to be my men. Why? Because they weren't going to be putting themselves in the way. They would get themselves out of the way and let God work in them. So the good news for all of us is it's not about your good looks and it's not about your ability. It's not about your intellect. It's about you surrendering completely to the will of God, and then God really gets to work in you and through you. So Gideon was in the right mind space, at least the first part. He wasn't all the way convinced about the fact that God would do everything through him. He required some proof. We'll get to that next week. But no, Christian, God can work in you no matter who you are. God can change the world no matter who you are. God can save souls through you no matter who you are, as long as you get yourself out of the way and let God do his thing. Here's another point. Victory lies in the hand of God. You need to take courage in his presence. Stay close to him. Watch him do amazing things. That's the life Gideon got to have. That's what he had the opportunity to do. He stayed close to God. When God called him, he stayed close to him, and God did amazing things. And that is true for you too. Because, listen, Christian, each and every one of you are called. Gideon was called by the angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord appeared and called him to a specific task. Christian, you are called too. You're called to shine the light of God in the world. You're called to peace. You are called to go into the world, making disciples. All these things that I know feel like these things are too big for me, and they are. But they're not too big for God. So the key to your life is walking closely to God and then just simply obeying. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to see Gideon do some terrifying things that I'm sure terrified him. But because he had started to learn to trust that God was with him, he obeyed anyway. In the face of fear, in the face of pressure from his own people, in the face of an enemy who would murder him, he trusted and obeyed. Because here's a lesson that you and I need to learn and absorb and walk with every day. You may not be enough, but you plus God is enough for anything. Do you believe that? Do you believe that as long as you're walking with God and he's at your side and the Lord is with you, that he can accomplish literally anything he wants through you? It's about time God's people need to learn that lesson and believe that lesson and start looking for a God to lead them into places that may be scary, that may be terrifying. But God leads us into those places to accomplish his mighty, perfect, beautiful will. And that's what we all want, right? We all want God to be glorified. We want people to see him and know him. We want to put him up on a pedestal for all to give him honor and praise and glory. And that starts with the way you live your life. Surrender yourself so that he can live in you. That's the challenge for you this week. How am I in the way? What is God calling me to do? And how can I get out of the way and let him go about his business? That's the challenge. If anybody has any need this morning of prayer or baptism or help, that's why we're here. Please come forward while we stand and sing.